The dance studio was extremely quiet. In the mirror, the man was the first to recover. He stood before the 5 girls and started to glare threateningly at them. One of the girls started to weep, so the man yanked her up from the floor and pointed his finger at her face while his lips moved. The girl shook her head vehemently. Then, the girl who was as tall as Zhang Ye stood up. She walked over to the man and started to help him persuade the other girls. From how she carried herself, she seemed to know the man and shared a more than friendly relationship. Perhaps it was even she who planned for the man to appear just after the female teacher left. With the girl's persuasion and the man's threat, the other girls finally nodded. After a few more minutes of discussion, the man was the first to leave. The 5 girls then entered the dressing room to change, and they all left soon after. The mirror returned to normal, but the atmosphere in the dance studio grew tense. Chen Ji could feel the chill coming from his back. It felt like he was carrying a frozen dead body. That's all. The mirror only recorded what had happened in the dance studio but did not go into what happened next. Chen Ji believed there had to be more than that. After falling from the 4th floor, as long as it wasn't headfirst, Zhang Ye still had a chance of being rescued. Red Spectre harbors deep resentment. Maybe the fatty snuffed out Zhang Ya's last breath because he was afraid of being exposed. The water system of the activities center has been renewed, so perhaps the fatty used the system to deal with the body. As the thought cropped up in his mind, Chen Ji rejected it. Zhang Ye was lost inside the school, so the police had to have been involved. Furthermore, cleaning up a body was not as simple as depicted on those crime dramas. Sometimes, the more one tried to hide, the more obvious it became. Chen Ji was curious what happened next, but the mirror had stopped moving. Perhaps I should give Inspector Li a call. This is a murder, and Western Jiuzhang's private academy is within their jurisdiction, so he must have some kind of record. Chen Ji's idea was not bad, but when he planned to pick up his phone, a scream came from behind him. Zhang Ya's hair started to twine up his shoulders like snakes curling themselves around his neck and chest, tying them close together. I'm not leaving, I just want to help you. Chen Ji argued before his breath was choked out of him. However, the black hair continued to constrict like a boa constrictor suffocating its prey. Perhaps from Zhang Ya's perspective, this was the only way the two of them could be together. This was true love. Chen Ji had escaped from the wolf's den to enter the tiger's cave. Now he understood why Zhang Ya's love letter was a curse. This lady did not like living man, and the more she loved a man, the greater her desire to kill him. Standing back to back, his limbs too weak to even resist, all Chen Ji could do was to argue his case. I will help you call the police and have law enforcement provide justice by bringing all who have harmed you to the judgment of law. The words felt ineffective even to Chen Ji's ears. Zhang Ya's situation was unique. Unlike the family of 4 at Ping'an Apartments, she did not need him for revenge. Those who had harmed her were trapped inside chairs already. And Chen Ji believed she had plenty to do with that. The kind and graceful Zhang Ye had been completely corrupted into a mad specter. Chen Ji did not even dare to imagine the type of disaster that had befallen the 5 girls before they were trapped inside the chairs. Chen Ji had given up. This was how he was going to go, but as he prepared for death, the black hair stopped attacking. What's wrong? There are still people who haven't received their just punishment. He uttered quickly, to stress that he would help Zhang Ye capture all those who had harmed her. The black hair started to release as if Zhang Ye was also considering the options. All Chen Ji could do then was wait. The dark dance studio returned to silence. 10 seconds later, an unexpected thing happened. While he was dancing on the line of life and death, the door to the dance studio was suddenly pushed open, and a lanky guy poked his head in to look around. When he saw Chen Ji, a cruel, excited grin lit up his face, and the hand with the peony tattoo pulled out a fruit knife from his back pocket. However, coincidentally, when Chen Ji saw the man, he also smiled, his expression saying, "You're finally here. Surprised to see me. You've left too many clues. The bricks on the outer walls had your footsteps, and the window on the first floor of this building had fresh dirt and grass stuck to it. After entering the building, your footprints are practically everywhere. You're too careless, and now, you shall pay." The man standing at the door was naturally Zhang Peng. His eyes were bloodshot, and his mental state was unusually animated. He held the fruit knife in his usable arm. However, to Chen Ji's surprise, after Zhang Peng said that long speech, as he took the first step into the dance studio, the expression on his face shifted drastically. Earlier, he had been vicious, but now, he retreated worriedly, his eyes glowing with caution and resentment. The mirror monster has taken control of his body. Before Chen Ji could react, Zhang Peng started to race down the stairs. He seemed to have spotted something scary. His limbs were twisted in unnatural angles as he ran, which gave him the impression of a puppet being pulled along by his master. The black hair around Chen Ji disappeared, along with the girl behind him. All he could see was a red flash across the mirror. A chase seemed to have begun. The chilliness from his back gradually dissipated, and life returned to Chen Ji's frozen limbs. He picked up his phone and backpack before racing toward the stairs, his speed no less than Zhang Peng's. This bloody heart mission will have to be put on the back burner for now. If I truly earn Zhang Ya's affection, my life in the future will be a little too exciting for me to handle. Chen Ji dashed out of the activities center. He took a glance at the surrounding dark forest and used his phone to call Inspector Li. The phone rang once before it was picked up, and Inspector Li's voice came through. Xiao Chen. Did you run into Zhang Peng? Western Jiu Zhang's private academy. Zhang Peng is here. Other than that, I have something important to tell you, Chen Ji said through heavy breaths as he raced toward the school gate. Fu Jun, De Yang, contact the investigation team immediately. Inspector Li didn't hang up. After he gave his orders, he returned his attention to Chen Ji. What is this other thing you want to talk about? I discovered another murder case at Western Jiu Zhang's private academy. You found yet another murder case. Inspector Li's tone on the other end of the phone was puzzled to say the least. 4 years ago, a female student by the name of Zhang Yu jumped out of the building, but there is more to her death than suicide. Chen Ji said firmly. Wait a minute, let me go look at the files first. If the victim's family had asked for an autopsy, we should have the record of it somewhere. Inspector Li didn't hang up as he turned on the lights of the records room to search for the files. He finally found something 5 minutes later. Wait, why does Western Jiu Zhang's private academy sound so familiar? Xiao Chen, get out of that school now. I'm already heading for the gate, what's wrong? That school is just weird. I can't explain it to you in just a few sentences, but I can give you a number. 6 people committed suicide within the span of 2 weeks at that school, and their deaths were all very weird. The sound of paper flipping could be heard through the phone as Inspector Li looked through the files. That sounds about right. That number fits what I'm thinking. The school gate was within Chen Ji's view, he could exit the place soon. Fits what you're thinking. What exactly is happening over there? Don't mind that, check whether the name of the first suicide victim is Zhang Yu or not. Chen Ji was in a hurry to confirm his suspicion. Inspector Li double-checked the records before replying. Indeed, the name is Zhang Yu, but she did die from a fall. It is a suicide because the mortician did not find any other wounds on her body. On the day of the discovery, the police did visit the crime scene for investigation. The girl fell from the 4th floor's dance studio, the window she fell from was undamaged, and the soundproof foam around it showed no signs of cleaning. So, from this, we confirm Zhang Yu jumped out of the building without outside influence. Without outside influence. Inspector Li, have you considered that she was forced to do so? If she didn't jump, she would have been raped. Chen Ji relayed the scenes he had seen in the mirror. We considered that as well, and there are testimonies from Zhang Ya's roommates in the records. All 5 girls said that they didn't know anything. Zhang Yu jumped off the building after their class was over, so Zhang Yu was inside the studio alone. According to their testimonies, Zhang Yu had always suffered from high stress, was prone to solitude, and was perhaps even mentally unstable. To confirm their testimonies, the police at the time even verified their accounts with the girls from the class, and everyone agreed. Zhang Yu is definitely not the person they described, they all banded together to frame her. Zhang Yu was feeling indignant on Zhang Ya's behalf. He did not expect that the whole class would gang up on Zhang Yu, the girl didn't even do anything wrong. What kind of person Zhang Yu was, you and I will never know, but the evidence doesn't lie. Inspector Li didn't understand why Chen Ji was so agitated. In any case, get out of that school as soon as you can. We're sending our men to come fetch you. They were all lying. Take a closer look at Zhang Ya's time of death, it should be before the class was over. They lied on the time of death, so those 5 girls were accomplices. The volume of Chen Ji's voice inadvertently increased. That's where you're wrong. Zhang Ya's time of death was between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Those 5 girls left school at around 5:30 p.m., their usual time of departure. Inspector Li didn't know how happened to Chen Ji at the school, so he stood from an outsider's perspective to analyze the situation. Impossible. It is indeed possible. The mortician conducted a detailed analysis based on livor mortis and rigor mortis. Zhang Ya's time of death is indeed between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. The cause of death was a broken spine. Other than that, there were wounds to her skull, calcaneus, and hip bone, all common injuries suffered by suicide victims that died from falling. Chen Ji had no way to retort. He stopped where he was. If Zhang Ye did jump off the building before the 5 girls left, this means that she didn't die instantly after the fall. However, due to the broken bones that incapacitated her body, she could only lie in a pool of her own blood as she waited for death to come, tortured by pain and heartache until she truly died around 6 to 8 p.m. Your hypothetical scenario is possible, but you have forgotten one thing. If the girl still had a breath in her after she fell off the building, why wouldn't the 5 girls who were there save her? Even if they had their own reasons not to save her, other people at the school would have discovered her. It was a holiday, and the school was deserted other than the 6 of them who were at school to practice for the upcoming statewide competition. Their teacher had already left beforehand, and even if there were guards or someone of the sort, isn't it possible that they were sent away by people with ill intentions? Chen Ji posed a differing opinion. I'm not going to argue that with you. After all, it is a moot point arguing whether Zhang Ye died from suicide or murder. You believe those 5 girls were the real murderers in Zhang Ya's death and collaborated with each other to provide false testimony, but 2 weeks after that, these 5 girls died one after another. The real murderers you assumed are now dead, so how are we supposed to investigate this case? Inspector Li was more worried about Chen Ji's safety. Inspector Li, I never said that these 5 girls are the murderers, they are merely accomplices. The real murderer who caused Zhang Ya's death is a fatty that is 1.8 meters tall with a slouch back. That's quite a detailed description. Mind telling me how you came to that conclusion? 4 years ago, the security at Western Jiuzhang's private academy hadn't been completed yet, and all the witnesses are now dead. But you're telling me there's a real murderer on the run. How do you expect me to believe you? Inspector Li had worked overtime for the past few days already thanks to the Ping and Apartments case. It was why he was still at the station even at 2 a.m. Lethargy could be heard laced in his words. Chen Ji could discern the suspicion in Inspector Li's voice. We can start by investigating the people who are related to Western Jiuzhang's private academy from 4 years ago. We have to find this person. He was at the crime scene. Chen Ji, starting a police investigation is not a game. Do you know how difficult it is to reopen a case that was closed 4 years ago? Even if you can convince me, it'll be pointless if you cannot convince my superiors. What we need is actual proof, not suspicion, not speculation. Everything that I've said is the truth. That is according to you. Inspector Li had started rearranging the files to put them back where they were. Do you mind telling me why you are suddenly so interested in this case? You don't give me the impression of a young man who is filled with a sense of justice. Why am I so insistent? Chen Ji was startled by this sudden question from Inspector Li. He was reminded of the aid that Zhang Ye had lent him when he was trapped inside the wooden hut, as well as the chilling loneliness coming from his back when Zhang Ye was standing behind him inside the dance studio. It's nothing. In the current circumstances, the only person who can help her and come to her aid is me. Chen Ji looked at the black phone. I still don't understand what you're saying. Inspector Li continued after a long pause. But holding up justice is the job of law enforcement. Since you've brought up the suspicion, after the case on Ping and Apartments is wrapped up, I'll personally help you look into this. Thank you, Uncle Sanbao. Chen Ji sighed in relief. Capturing the real murderer, I suppose, is giving Zhang Ye some kind of release. With regards to this godforsaken place, I really don't want to return again. He hung up the phone and turned to look at Western Jiuzhang's private academy one last time. To his shock, Red Spectre Zhang Ye was just standing behind him. There were about 3 meters between them. Fresh blood dripping on her school uniform, Zhang Ye looked at Chen Ji with her head tilted. This time, she didn't move closer, and her expression was a bit weird. Chen Ji was thankful that he didn't say anything bad about Zhang Ye earlier. He laughed awkwardly and said, I came out for fresh air because the dance studio was a bit too stuffy. The red blood trailed down her uniform as Zhang Ye stared at Chen Ji. Then she raised her slender, pale arm to point at the building that Chen Ji knew as the teacher's lounge. You want me to go there? Before Chen Ji could get an answer, Zhang Ye disappeared. Chen Ji was several meters away from the gate, so he was caught in a conundrum. If he returned to the school to investigate, he might run into more danger, but if he just left like that, he would feel so unsatisfied. Zhang Ya's attitude toward me seems to have softened. Her hint should be related to the case 4 years ago. However, this school seems to have another presence similar to Zhang Ye, and there is more than one. I should probably wait for the police to arrive first before I go back in. After jumping out of the school, Chen Ji stood on guard outside the gate. He wasn't sure whether Zhang Peng was still alive or not, so he did not dare let his guard down. 15 minutes later, the blinding headlights of a car cut through the darkness. 2 police cars were heading his way. Chen Ji jumped out into the road and waved the flashlight on his phone. "I'm here." The car stopped at the gate to Western Jiuzhang's private academy, and Inspector Li, as well as an officer Chen Ji hadn't seen before, stepped out from the car. "Uncle Li, you're so fast." According to Chen Ji's calculations, the police should have required another half an hour before to get there. "We received a distress call from a taxi driver earlier, saying he was getting robbed, so we were already on the way to this place." Inspector Li had heavy circles under his eyes, signs that he had overworked himself for the past few days. "Is that so? In any case, come in quick, Zhang Peng should be still inside the school." Chen Ji pointed at the abandoned school's gate. One might have thought he was the host inviting the guests into his house. "De Yong," Inspector Li said, and a muscular police officer who was about 1.9 meters tall pulled out a clipper from the car's trunk. "After entering the school compound, we'll need to be very careful. The suspect is very cunning, so stick together in pairs." He turned to look at Chen Ji. "Where is the last place you saw the suspect?" "At the dance studio, but he has run away already. In any case, I have something else to report to you." Chen Ji walked to Inspector Li's side and pointed at the teacher's lounge. "Inspector Li, do you mind following me? De Yong, you stay behind to watch over the road, others move out according to plan." Inspector Li issued his orders, and then he followed Chen Ji into the teacher's lounge. This building only had 3 floors, but the interior decor was much more high class than the other buildings Chen Ji had been in. Inspector Li held the flashlight in his hand and asked, "Why are we here? Did you see the suspect run this way?" His gaze was sharp, and the tiredness fell from the man. Once he entered the crime scene, Inspector Li seemed to morph into another person. "Zhang Peng won't have come here." Chen Ji walked ahead, trying to pinpoint the exact room Zhang Ya's finger had pointed at. "I'm bringing you to the place that's related to the death of the girl 4 years ago. Haven't I said I will help you investigate that after we capture Zhang Peng? The 2 cases cannot be mixed together, and the most important thing now is to capture Zhang Peng. We're here, this is the room." Chen Ji didn't answer Inspector Li. He had waited for the police to come because he wanted to lower the risk to its bare minimum. The sign on the door said that this was the storeroom for gym equipment. After pulling off the seals and kicking the door open, Chen Ji and Inspector Li walked into the room. Numerous balls littered the room, and exercise equipment like tennis rackets and ping-pong paddles hung from the walls. "You brought me here to see this." Inspector Li used his flashlight to scan the corners of the room. "What can it prove?" "Gym equipment." Chen Ji walked to the center of the room and started ransacking the place. He stopped when he reached a single bed that was placed next to the innermost cupboard. There was also such a bed inside the dance studio. It looked specially made because the bed frame was slender than most normal bed frames. "Why is there a need for a bed inside the storeroom?" Chen Ji frowned with confusion before lifting up the bed's wooden boards. A harrowing scene revealed itself before their eyes. Underneath the worn and dusty bed frame hid 10 female ballet shoes of differing sizes, and a pair of them had been dyed black by blood. That many of them. Looking at the shoes that appeared to have been purposely hidden underneath the bed, Chen Ji did not feel anger but shock that the incident at Western Jiuzhang's private academy might be more distressing than he had assumed. "There's more than one victim." Chen Ji asked Inspector Li, "Why would the ballet shoes of the suicide girl be hidden here? Was there any mention of the girl's shoes in the case report?" "There's no record on the shoes." Inspector Li frowned. "The shoes are all covered with dust even though they are hidden under the bed. This means that they have probably been left here for a long time already. However, they were placed neatly in a row, like someone took special care to look after them. Perhaps this is the murderer's fetish." "Uncle Li, you're the police officer here, so you have to help return justice to the victims." Chen Ji dropped the boards to the side. The murderer had free access to the dance studio as well as this equipment storeroom, so he was probably a manager or guard. "If what you're saying is true, then that does narrow down the investigation scope quite a bit." Inspector Li seemed to have been moved by the pair of darkened dancing shoes. "Don't worry, I will not rest until I get to the bottom of this case. No matter who the murderer is, I'll have him punished to the full extent of the law." When Inspector Li said that, Chen Ji's black phone vibrated. He pulled it out to glance at it. There was a new message on the phone. "Managed to locate Zhang Ya's red dancing shoes before dawn. Completed Zhang Ya's bloody heart mission. Mission completion rate, 50%. Zhang Ya's affection level toward you has increased. You can write something you want her to do in Zhang Ya's personal profile page. Note, it mustn't be against Zhang Ya's will. Chen Ji silently retreated to the door. Tonight's experience might have been harrowing, but at least the result is good. He opened up Zhang Ya's personal page, and the display turned red immediately. My demand mustn't be against Zhang Ya's will, that's the only requirement. After some thought, Chen Ji wrote, I hope Zhang Yu will listen to me forever. I'm sorry, but your demand is against Zhang Ya's will, please change it. I hope Zhang Yu will protect me from being harmed. I'm sorry, but your demand is against Zhang Ya's will, please change it. I hope Zhang Yu will not harm me or harbor any intention to kill me. That's doable, right? I'm sorry, but your demand is against Zhang Ya's will, please change it. After trying it 3 more times and failing 3 more times, Chen Ji decided to give up. He would continue the research when he was back at his haunted house. To his surprise, when he exited Zhang Ya's personal page, there was another unread alert on the black phone. Haven't I finished the Bloody Heart mission already? Chen Ji opened the second message without much thought. The Spectres favored, congratulations for completing rare level Ghost, Red Spectre's Bloody Heart mission. This mission is part of a side mission for a 4-star scenario, School of the Afterlife. Note, when the Bloody Heart mission's completion rate reaches 100%, it'll unlock the trial mission for School of the Afterlife. Mission effective time is 3 months. Completing all the trial missions will unlock said scenario. School of the Afterlife, Scream Factor 4 stars. Side Mission 1, Red Dancing Shoes. The school after midnight is the Red Swan stage. She is a wicked specter as well as a red ballet dancer. Mission Venue, Western Jiuzhang's Private Academy. Side Mission 2, The Hanging Man. I never kid, not in life nor in death. Mission Venue, Western Jiuzhang's Private Academy. Side Mission 3, The Stink. He collects all the trash in his bedroom just to hide an unspeakable secret. Mission Venue, Western Jiuzhang's Private Academy. Side Mission 4, The Pen Spirit Who Refused to Leave. Pen Spirit, can you tell me who will die next? Mission Venue, New Yang High School. Side Mission 5, The Fifth Cubicle in the Toilet. Every day at midnight, people swore they could see a red shadow appear inside the toilet. To catch her, I hid inside the 5th cubicle of the toilet. Mission Venue, New Yang High School. Side Mission 6, Deep Well. 1 brother and 1 sister went to school, but how come no one returned? Mission Venue, New Yang High School. Side Mission 7, The Sealed Classroom. There's a classroom at the end of the corridor that's always sealed. No one ever enters it, but every night the classroom comes alive with activity. Mission Venue, New Yang High School. Side Mission 8, Eternal Life. In an undisclosed underground morgue, there's a group who seek eternal life. Mission Venue, Western Jiuzhang's Medical University. Last mission, currently locked. Reading the series of message on the black phone, Chen Ji was baffled. 4-star scenario. Even a 1-star scenario manages to cause forensic science students to faint, so just how scary will a 4-star scenario be? Everyone has a threshold with regards to horror. Once that threshold is overshot, it might be harmful to the person's health. Chen Ji read the various side missions again, and just the mission description alone made his skin crawl. Most importantly, these were just side missions, the finale was still locked. Logically speaking, Chen Ji had to finish the 8 side missions first before he could unlock the final mission. A 4-star scenario is probably too hard for the current me. Perhaps I'll be able to challenge later, but definitely not now. Chen Ji closed the message and clicked into the unlockable scenario tab. Other than the 3rd sick hall and the haunted hearse, there was now an additional School of the Afterlife, but different from the previous 2. This scenario's name was written in blood red ink. So, this one scenario practically collects all the haunted school stories into one. In that case, even after this scenario is unlocked, it probably can't be released to every member of the public. Looking at the scream factor delineation of the various scenarios, a thought bubbled up in Chen Ji's mind. 1-star scenario should be open to anyone, but entrance to scenarios that were 3 stars or above should be limited to those who had survived 1- and 2-star scenarios. In other words, this could be considered a type of visitor protection. The playability of the haunted house will be increased in this manner as well. Those who have visited once may return to challenge a scarier scenario until they perfect every scenario. This means that they will have a different experience every time they visit, and this will definitely boost the popularity of my haunted house. Suddenly, He-san's image appeared in Chen Ji's mind. He was technically the only visitor who had challenged more than one of the haunted house's scenarios. That kid is somewhat of a good luck charm of the haunted house. Perhaps I should invite him again when the new scenario is unlocked. There were many fresh ideas in his mind, like giving additional rewards and certificates after the visitors survived certain levels. This way it would encourage the visitors to break through to challenge scarier scenarios. This makes me feel like some kind of dungeon master. Chen Ji couldn't help but smile. In the future, there would probably be professional teams who came to his haunted house to understand the true meaning of fear. Why are you smiling dumbly to yourself? Looks like you up to some kind of no good. Inspector Lee came out from the room. He had completed the initial survey. I've communicated with Team 1 and Team 2, they couldn't find any trace of Zhang Peng. The atmosphere of this school weirds me out, and the environment is too complicated to navigate at night. We'll retreat for now and set up a plan when the investigation team gets here. Okay. Chen Ji had prepared to leave for a long time already. All his reasons for being there had been accomplished. Everyone thus retreated from the school grounds. The police sealed the gate, waiting for aid to arrive. The investigation team finally arrived when dawn came, and they looked as exhausted as Inspector Lee's group. After a simple greeting, Inspector Lee drove Chen Ji home in his car. Yet another sleepless night. Chen Ji finally relaxed when he was sitting in the back seat of the police car. He stretched lazily before lying down on the cushion. You're the first person that I've come across who can be so comfortable inside a police car, Inspector Lee commented with a degree of dissatisfaction. By the way, I have a few questions that I haven't had the chance to ask you until now. Then, don't ask. Chen Ji could already guess the questions. He used his backpack to smother his face and pretend to fall asleep. Why would you go to Western Jiu Zhang's private academy at midnight? And how did you know the exact time of death of the girl? This was 4 years ago, and even the forensic doctor wouldn't be able to tell me the time of death without referring to the case file, but you managed to do that. That's just too abnormal. Inspector Lee crawled into the driver's seat and started the engine. Lucky guesses. Chen Ji turned his body about. Uncle Sanbao, can you turn the air conditioning on? You've dropped all formalities around me, haven't you? Inspector Lee grumbled as he turned on the air conditioning. It was then that his phone suddenly rang. Uncle, it's your phone. Talk some more and see if I'll toss you out of the car or not. Inspector Lee looked at the ID before answering it. He did not say a word, and there was no sound coming from the other end either. The call was ended 3 seconds later. Who is so brave to make prank calls to the police? Chen Ji turned to look but was surprised to find Inspector Lee's facial expression had softened. That's my wife. Every time I'm on a special mission, she'll give me a call to check on my safety. Due to the sensitive nature of certain missions, we've come up with our own style of communication. Instead of verbal communication, as long as I pick up the phone, that means that I'm still okay. Auntie sure cares about you. Of course. Inspector Lee put his phone away, and his face twisted with confusion. Wait, just who do you think you are? You call me uncle and my wife auntie. He waited for an answer, but it never came. He turned and realized Chen Ji had already fallen asleep. When the police car arrived at New Century Park, Chen Ji was shaken awake by Inspector Lee. The former left the car in a sort of daze, carrying his backpack. Be careful at all times. Zhang Peng is still out there. Based on the current situation and his twisted mentality, he might give up everything just to take revenge on you, Inspector Lee reminded Chen Ji. I know. The mention of Zhang Peng did wake Chen Ji up slightly. He waved at Inspector Lee before turning to enter New Century Park. The elderly guard was already asleep. Even as Chen Ji walked through the front door, he did not wake up. Tonight's reward is quite valuable. I can ask for a favor from Zhang Ye since I've completed her Bloody Heart mission, but would it be too much of a waste to have her eliminate the mirror monster for me? Chen Ji pulled out the black phone and clicked into Zhang Ya's page. The affection level had been raised from crazy about you to yours forever. I'll need to study this closer so that I maximize the usability of this chance. As he entered the haunted house, Chen Ji did not exit the page but continued reading through the details on Zhang Ye. When I have enough money, perhaps I should rent myself a room outside. Sleeping in the staff break room feels weird after a while, Chen Ji thought to himself as he walked down the dark corridor. He was familiar with every corner of this haunted house, even without light, he wouldn't knock into anything. When he passed the first floor toilet, the wooden door creaked as if blown by the wind. The wooden door was not sturdy to begin with, and after being assaulted by Chen Ji using the mallet, the door itself had become misshapen. He tried to close the door as best as he could, but when he walked toward it, he noticed that the window in the toilet was half open. Did I forget to close the window when I left? The sky outside the window was brightening. Chen Ji stood at the window to inspect it. He didn't see anything like a footprint near or on it. It's probably due to the recent high amount of stress. Even so, Chen Ji grabbed the mop that was leaning against the wall as he headed toward the control room. The haunted house was fitted with cameras that covered every corner. A simple look at them would confirm for Chen Ji whether someone had snuck in or not. Pushing open the control room door, Chen Ji sat before the computer and booted up the computer. All the surveillance footage was stored inside this computer. Chen Ji looked for the ID of the camera at the entrance of the toilet and pulled up the video. He thought he was being overly cautious, but several minutes later, Chen Ji did discover a strange man on screen. The man had his head lowered and quickly rushed down the corridor once he exited the toilet. Someone did come in, there's another person hiding in this haunted house other than myself. That woke Chen Ji up completely. The man seems to know there's a camera at the entrance of the toilet and knows where he's going. This means that he has probably been inside the building before. There were several cameras installed on the corridor. After the mysterious man disappeared from the camera, Chen Ji searched for the ID of the next camera, which was placed at the corner of the corridor that led to the toilet. On the second video feed, it was shown that the strange man turned into the control room once he raced down the corridor. He headed for the control room directly, probably to destroy the evidence. This man knows the layout of my haunted house very well. There was only one name in Chen Ji's mind, and just as he was about to continue his investigation, he saw himself on screen. The video has rolled on to the present. That's me holding the black phone and the mop as I entered the control room. Wait, this means that the man hasn't left. Just as Chen Ji saw himself on screen, he grabbed the mop next to him and turned around. The locker that was about 2 meters behind him was shoved open, and a man with bloodshot eyes, holding a sharp knife in his hand, jumped out from it. Zhang Peng. Chen Ji screamed when he saw the man's twisted features. Probably agitated by Chen Ji's voice, Zhang Peng charged at him with the knife. Chen Ji calmed down quickly from the initial shock. He opened the room door that was behind him and retreated as he deflected Zhang Peng's assault. Even though Zhang Peng was handicapped, he fought with the passion of one who did not want his life anymore. The man knew this was the end of the line, and what he wanted now was someone to join him in death. Chen Ji evaded left and right as he moved toward the maintenance room. He looked like he was cornered, but that was part of his plan. Zhang Peng had put his life on the line, so escape was out of question. He needed to fight back, but the wooden mop in his hand wouldn't harm Zhang Peng, so Chen Ji was reminded of Dr. Skullcracker's iron hammer. Earlier, to avoid an unnecessary misunderstanding with the police, Chen Ji had hidden the hammer inside the maintenance room. The assault intensified. Zhang Peng seemed to have seen through Chen Ji's plan. He did not even attempt to avoid Chen Ji's hit as he allowed the wooden mop to smack on his body. His aim was to get close to Chen Ji. Very soon, Chen Ji retreated to the door of the maintenance room. He was biding the time to jump into the room, but before that could happen, he felt an extra weight on his body like he was carrying a boulder. "You're going to die today." Zhang Peng, who had been silent, suddenly cried out. Spirit had returned to the man's eyes, and his knife skill became much more agile. What's going on? The mirror monster has been controlling Zhang Peng until now. So where is the monster now? Chen Ji could feel his movement slowing down. He used his hand to feel behind him, but he couldn't feel anything. Something pressed hard on his shoulder, causing him to bend over slightly. He turned his head around to look, and a black shadow about the size of an adult man was riding on his back. The mirror monster. Panic flashed across his eyes. Chen Ji dipped to avoid a knife aiming at his neck, and he turned to blast through the door into the maintenance room. He ran toward the cupboards that held all the random junk. It's still not time to give up. Zhang Peng and the Black Shadow share one entity. If I use the hammer to incapacitate Zhang Peng, then I'll be able to stop the Black Shadow as well. Chen Ji felt like he was dragging a small mountain on his back. He had underestimated the Black Shadow's growth. Compared to the first time they met, this creature had become much harder to deal with. Something was choking the breath from his throat as the weight on his back continued to increase. The laughter of various individuals appeared in his ears, and when Chen Ji reached the cupboard, he was drained from exhaustion. Chen Ji's consciousness wavered, and a humming sound sung in his ears. Without turning to look, Chen Ji knew Zhang Peng was walking toward him with the knife. The monster on his back continued to press down on him. Chen Ji used every ounce of his energy to open the cupboard door. As he tried to search for the hammer through the junk, the black phone fell from his pocket, the screen still on Zhang Ya's personal page. The mirror monster had Chen Ji in a chokehold, and the murderer was inching toward him with a sharp knife. Chen Ji had no time to hesitate. When he saw Zhang Ya's page, he reached out to type 2 words, "Help me?" The weird laugh in his mind grew louder. Zhang Peng's knife came at him before Chen Ji had the time to key in anything else. He turned around and grabbed anything from the cupboard that he could get his hands on to throw at Zhang Peng. His limbs were failing him, and the veins in Chen Ji's neck were protruding. Even without the stab from Zhang Peng, he would be strangled by the mirror monster. Chen Ji clawed violently at his neck, but he caught no purchase. It was as if there was nothing there. Chen Ji placed his last hope on the black phone. He turned his head to look at the phone on the ground and saw that there was a line of blood-red letters on screen. She has understood your demand, so please accept the content of the first agreement. It appeared like the demand went both ways. While Chen Ji asked something of Zhang Ye, she would also ask something of Chen Ji, and Chen Ji's order would only be carried out once the agreement had been reached. At a time like this, no matter how ridiculous the content of Zhang Ye's agreement was, Chen Ji would agree unhesitatingly. Inching his finger forward, Chen Ji pressed the yes button on screen. The moment his finger touched the screen, the temperature of the small room dropped tremendously as cold drafts blew into the room from all corners. The weird laugh in Chen Ji's head stopped immediately. He could feel the monster on his back shiver, it could also feel fear. The sound of dripping suddenly appeared in the room like something was leaking. The mirror monster on Chen Ji's back released its hold on Chen Ji and escaped back into Zhang Peng's body. The maintenance room became eerily quiet. Even Zhang Peng knew something was wrong. This gambler who had nothing to lose did not choose to retreat at the last moment but raised the knife to charge at Chen Ji. However, he only took the first step when the expression on his face changed. The mirror monster had forcibly taken over his body, making him leave. The man and the ghost were quarreling, forcing them into an action. While that was happening, Chen Ji's shadow slowly stood up, and a bloody dress appeared behind Chen Ji. Zhang Ye had probably left quite a heavy trauma on both the man and the ghost at Western Jiu Zhang's private academy because when they saw the red specter behind Chen Ji, a consensus was made, and the man turned to run. Without the constriction from the mirror monster, Chen Ji was released from the lock. He had almost been killed by Zhang Peng, and he was still reeling with anger, so naturally, he wouldn't let them escape so easily. He just stood up with the iron hammer when the red specter made her move. Zhang Ye seemed to have a fetish for cruel kills because even without the order from Chen Ji, needle-like black hair shot into Zhang Peng's body. The murderer's footsteps slowed. Naturally, Chen Ji would not give up on this perfect opportunity. He swung the iron hammer on Zhang Ji's shoulder. The impact caused the man to fall forward. Making use of this opportunity, Chen Ji aimed yet another strike at Zhang Peng's upper calf. An ear-splitting shriek escaped from the maintenance room. The mirror monster inside Zhang Peng knew that the man was cornered, so it decided to abandon Zhang Peng and flew toward the toilet. Not good, there's a mirror inside the first floor toilet. Before Chen Ji realized what had happened, Zhang Ye started to chase after the mirror monster. This shadow creature seemed to be highly interesting to her. I have to figure out a way to block the mirror. Chen Ji looked around him and spotted the half-full vat of fake blood left in the maintenance room. The toilet's door creaked in the wind. When Chen Ji arrived, he saw that half of the mirror body had already been punctured by Zhang Ya's hair, but it was just inches away from the mirror. You're not getting away that easily this time. Unsure whether it would be of use or not, Chen Ji splashed the fake blood all over the mirror. The black shadow hesitated before the mirror. Before it could react, tendrils of black hair curled around its body like snakes. Chen Ji could barely make out its humanoid shape anymore as it was caught in the hair. The bloody dress fluttered in the wind. After Zhang Ye got bored, she tore the black shadow that was compressed into a ball into two. She swallowed half of it before tearing up the other half into pieces and gently blowing it into Chen Ji's face. Chen Ji felt like something had entered his eyes, and his body shivered involuntarily from the sudden cold. What was that? Chen Ji wanted to get an answer from Zhang Ye, but after fulfilling her part of the agreement, this cruel red specter disappeared into his shadow. The toilet door was still squeaking on its hinges, but there was nothing left inside the toilet to suggest that the crazy things that Chen Ji had just witnessed had truly happened. Just like that, Zhang Ye ate half of the mirror monster and blew the other half into my eyes. Chen Ji looked at the mirror and a sensation that felt like he was dreaming overwhelmed him. The mirror monster has been taken care of, so there shouldn't be a new number that surfaces on the mirror tomorrow night, right? Until now, he could not understand what the numbers meant, but he had a feeling they pointed to a huge secret. After closing the door, Chen Ji used his phone to contact the police. He did not trouble Inspector Li this time. After all, the man wasn't a machine, he had been required to deal with more than enough over the past few days already. Leaning against the wall, Chen Ji glanced at Zhang Peng, who lay as if dead on the floor. When the mirror monster left his body, it seemed to have taken something from the man. The man's eyes looked blankly forward, and his gaze was soulless. I suppose this is a kind of karma. At 6 a.m., the investigation team from the main city, officers from Western Jiujiang Police Station, and members of the park's management all gathered at the entrance of the haunted house. The last suspect from the Ping'an apartment case had finally been caught. After watching Zhang Peng being hauled into the police car, Chen Ji's taut nerves finally relaxed. He did not stay to chat but returned to the haunted house and locked himself in the break room. The case at the Ping'an apartment is finally wrapped up. The mirror monster has been eaten by Zhang Ye, so there are no more hidden threats lingering in my haunted house, meaning I can finally open all of the scenarios up for business in the morning. Chen Ji lay in bed, thinking about his future. What I should focus on next is the expansion of the haunted house because the new scenarios won't be unlocked without the expansion. After I wake up, I should go talk to Uncle Shu. In any case, I have to convince him to let me rent the underground parking lot. As he tried to fall asleep, Chen Ji felt a cold breeze caress his body. The chill did not leave even when he wrapped himself up in the covers. The chill seemed to come from his eyes. Zhang Ye did blow part of the mirror monster into my face. Could this be caused by that? Chen Ji grabbed a small piece of mirror to look at his face. Everything looked normal except perhaps his pupils turned darker like the surface of a bottomless lake. Eventually, fatigue caught up to him. Chen Ji placed the mirror underneath his pillow and soon drifted off to sleep. At 10:30 a.m., before he managed to catch several hours of sleep, Chen Ji was woken up by the call on his phone. He looked at the ID and answered it. Xiao Wan, you can have the morning off. Come back in the afternoon. Boss. There are so many people down here. There are even police and reporters. What have you done? But I've not done anything. Wait for me, I'm going down now. Chen Ji leaned closer to the window to glance down. There was indeed a great crowd outside the haunted house, and the number was still growing. Boss, listen to me, surrender while you still can before this gets worse. Surrender my foot. Just wait for me. After hanging up, Chen Ji quickly put on his clothes, washed his face, and ran to the door. He pulled back the heavy curtains and dashed out the gates. When Chen Ji made his appearance, the rowdy crowd started to quiet down. The surrounding visitors looked at Chen Ji with curiosity and more than a bit of disappointment in their eyes. Obviously, they had expected the person who was surrounded by the police to look less normal. This was the first time that Chen Ji had felt so many eyes on him. He seemed to shrivel up in shyness, but he felt like he should say something. Do any of you mind telling me what this is for? You are Chen Ji. The leading officer carried a box in his arms. He was slightly rotund, but his eyes were sharp and penetrating, which created a rather humorous contrast to his babyish face. Yes. Can I see your identification? Chen Ji searched for a long time before producing his identification card. All this while, he was silently studying the officer before him. The officer was wearing a uniform different from Inspector Li and his men. Okay, thank you for your cooperation. The officer smiled. He waved at the reporters beside him, opened the box in his hand, and announced in an official tone, for providing the murder case at Ping'an Apartments with crucial evidence, Jiujiang Municipal Bureau for Public Security is awarding this Level 3 Public Security Medal of Honor to Chen Ji. Hopefully, Chen Ji will appreciate this honor and continue to contribute to the maintenance and improvement of the public security of our society. This series of announcements confused Chen Ji. Things were happening too quickly for him to handle. As the box was pushed into his hands, he looked at the shiny metal, and there was only one thought on his mind, which was only half awake. Where's the reward money? The slightly rotund officer stood beside Chen Ji and paraded him to the wall of reporters. The whole process lasted for 15 minutes. After the crowd dispersed and the reporters left, Chen Ji quietly sought out the rotund officer. Sir, how may I refer to you? The name's Yan, you can call me Captain Yan. I was classmates with Western Jiujiang's Li. In fact, he has told me many things about you. Captain Yan seemed to be a friendly character. His eyes that looked upon Chen Ji were glowing the praise. The way you handled the case at Ping'an Apartments is impressive. When you were being chased by the killer, your reaction and observation skills surprised both me and Li. After being fed the series of praises, Chen Ji felt too embarrassed to jump to the topic of the reward money. All I did was run crazily around the woods. The case wouldn't have been solved without the police. In fact, I would have been the killer's latest victim if not for all of you. After the trading of compliments, Captain Yan realized that Chen Ji was still lingering shamelessly around the police car. He smiled to himself because it finally dawned on him why Chen Ji was there. Xiao Chen, you'll need to go to the main city's bureau personally to get the reward money. Due to the large scale of the case, it took a while for the reward to be approved, but you can go get it now? I hope you understand. Of course, of course. After knowing where to get the reward money, Chen Ji's heart that hung in the air finally settled. I came here today to thank you in person. Every unsolved case is like a boulder pressing on every police officer's heart, and it's something passed on from the senior to the junior. 4 years ago, I was also involved in this case, so thank you for solving this trouble in my heart. Captain Yan smiled sincerely. By the way, the elder from Ping'an apartment also wished to speak to you. The elder is incapacitated, can no longer move his lower body, and has lost much of his capacity to talk, but his mind is still sharp. He knows it is you who saved him and solved the death of his family. He also wants to thank you in person. I understand. For Chen Ji, the case was merely a mission dispensed by the black phone, but for the victims and their family, it was a meaningful closure. You'd better visit him soon. The elder is currently in hospital. Perhaps it was the emotions that ran high, or perhaps the question that has been keeping him alive has been answered. In any case, he's not doing so well. After that, Captain Yan got into the car. Okay, I'll visit him later in the afternoon. Looking at the special uniform that he wore, Chen Ji felt this Captain Yan carried a greater responsibility than he let on. After the police car left, the park's workers surrounded Chen Ji. Boss, are you going to be on television again? Not bad, there's even a medal. After sending them off, Chen Ji found Uncle Shu in the crowd, and he dragged him to a corner to speak. Uncle Shu, what's the update regarding the rental of the underground parking lot? The money will be coming soon. The mention of underground parking lot made Uncle Shu frown. This is not the issue of budget. Xiao Chen, I cannot sit idle and watch you jump into your own grave. The visitor number of the park has been steadily dropping, and everyone is trying to flee. Don't you understand that? I do understand that, and I know what I'm doing, Chen Ji replied confidently. The haunted house might carry the key to the disappearance of his parents. Only by continuing to expand it would Chen Ji have the chance and the ability to interact with the other world. Still so stubborn. Uncle Shu tried to persuade Chen Ji for a long time, but it was to no avail. In the end, he could only sigh. Come with me then. Due to the appearance of the police, Mr. Luo is also with us. You might as well talk to him in person. Director Luo is here. Chen Ji had heard his parents mention this actual owner of New Century Park many times already. What do you think? The police set up a security perimeter around the park. Did you think they would not inform the management? To provide full cooperation, Director Luo has been staying at the park for the past few days. Uncle Shu led Chen Ji to a building on the northern side of the park. This was the second tallest structure in the park, behind the Ferris wheel. When you meet Director Luo later, remember to watch what you say. The less you say, the less likely you'll make a mistake, you understand. Chen Ji followed Uncle Shu into the elevator that led them up to the top floor. They stopped before the door of an office. The door wasn't locked. Uncle Shu knocked on it, and very soon, a man in his 50s came out from it. The man was of average height, and his hair was half white. His features were gentle, and the suit he wore was not branded, but it was clean and didn't have the slightest crease on it. This is Mr. Luo. He looks so different from the picture. From how Chen Ji saw it, the man standing before him looked more like a retired teacher. How can I help? The man inquired in a soft-spoken tone, surprisingly unbusinesslike. Director Luo, this is the brave Xiao Chen who helped the police capture the fugitive. Uncle Shu pulled Chen Ji to his side. He's here to get an update about the thing I reported to you earlier. He wishes to rent the unused underground parking lot. I understand. Leave us be, you can go busy yourself with your work. Director Luo signaled for Uncle Shu to leave. Director Luo had Chen Ji sit on the sofa while he poured 2 cups of tea. I've been informed you wish to rent the underground parking lot. Do you mind telling me why you plan to do that? I wish to expand the haunted house. I want to build an underground maze inside the parking lot. An underground maze? That's not a bad idea, but do you have the budget and ability to handle something of that scale? The rental for the space will be small in comparison to the finances you need to set up the place. Director Luo leaned against the couch, his eyes colored with lethargy and tiredness. I am not against your idea, and I can rent you the place, but before that, I need to ask you a few questions. Even though he had gotten a verbal agreement from Director Luo, the man had not yet mentioned the rental amount, so Chen Ji was still nervous. Ask away. You're the owner of a haunted house, so you know better than I do how high the early investment in a haunted house is. Also, different from hotels or motels, where you can still sell or reuse the tables, chairs, and utensils. If your haunted house fails, what are you going to do with the spooky props and items? Director Luo did raise a valid concern, something that Chen Ji had not even considered before. Even if you manage to do a good job reviving the haunted house, how are you going to solve the issue of returning customers? A haunted house is a one-time exhaustion product. There might be some initial hype, but it'll eventually run out because the number of your potential customers is only so big. You're going to invest greatly into this. Are you confident you'll even earn back your capital? One final question: by building your haunted house underground, how are you going to promote it? Your customer's number is highly dependent on the park's visitor number. How is your haunted house going to survive when the day comes for the park to close? Chen Ji knew that Director Luo was stopping him out of kindness. In fact, he knew that those who advised him against investing in the haunted house were only looking out for him. They had his best interests at heart. Director Luo's 3 questions revolved around Chen Ji's mind. The first 2 questions were easily solved with the presence of the black phone, so Chen Ji's real conundrum was the last question. If New Century Park closed, naturally, his haunted house would close, too. Moving to another place would be difficult. Just the number of documents would cause Chen Ji enormous headaches. Furthermore, his budget was limited. To find another location to fit the black phone scenarios would be impossible. Have you seriously considered these 3 questions? Director Luo seemed to anticipate Chen Ji's answer. Why don't you go back for now? We mustn't jump into important decision without detailed research and thorough contemplation. Chen Ji sat unmoved on the couch. He turned to look at Director Luo and asked directly, is the park really going to close soon? Director Luo did not confirm or deny, but the tiredness in his eyes deepened. If I say the park is really closing soon, will you insist on renting the underground parking lot? I will. Chen Ji's answer surprised Director Luo. Director Luo, I already have the solution for your first and second questions. And your third question is not valid. There was fire dancing in Chen Ji's eyes. The young man powered on fearlessly. My haunted house has never relied on anyone else before, and my visitor number will not be entirely dependent on the park. Give me time, and I will not only attract countless visitors to the haunted house, I will also use it to revive the entire park. Renting the underground parking lot is just the first plan. My plan is to build the world's first unique theme park that is based on horror and terror. After he finished what he had to say, Chen Ji finally remembered Uncle Xu's advice: the less you say, the less likely you'll make a mistake. He looked at Director Luo with uncertainty. He regretted telling him everything that was inside his heart. After listening to Chen Ji, Director Luo put down his cup, and the tiredness in his eyes had disappeared. After a moment's silence, he suddenly laughed and said, "You remind me too much of myself when I was young." He stood up and walked to open the curtain. The whole park was within view from the office. I'm the most devastated and most unwilling for the closing of New Century Park. He opened the window and allowed the wind to ruffle his peppered hair. This park means the world to me. If possible, I wish for it to stay open forever. Director Luo turned to smile at Chen Ji. His smile was complicated. It was a calm smile of a man who had seen the world rise and fall, one who had surrendered to the vagaries of fate. I've heard about your story. After your parents' disappearance, you quit your day job to take over their haunted house. In a way, our stories are very similar, but you are luckier than I am. He picked up a picture frame from the table. It was the only picture frame in the room. It had the picture of a pair of father and daughter. The father was of average height and had a gentle demeanor. The girl in his arms was cute, but her hands were twisted at a painful angle, and there seemed to be no life in her eyes. This is my daughter. She suffered from serious aphasia and required a special device to even stand upright. God was harsh on her, but she was a strong little girl who loved to smile, not only to me but to the world. Director Luo turned to look at the sky outside the window. But the world didn't smile back at her. I used to take my daughter to the garden for walks, but none of the kids wanted to play with her. When she turned to look at me helplessly, I knew that she was afraid that she had done something wrong and that was why she was being isolated. I didn't know how to console her, so we only took her out during the rainy days so that she wouldn't have to face the unfeeling crowd. Perhaps it was then that the thought to build my daughter her very own theme park appeared in my mind. Unfortunately, she didn't live to see the day the park was open. Putting down the frame, Director Luo's eyes were still surprisingly calm. Many people don't understand why I would risk bankruptcy to keep an outdated theme park alive, but I believe perhaps you do. I do. Chen Ji had already stood up earlier. He had not expected that Director Luo would reveal such intimate information to him. Everyone is trying to find a way out, but you're different. You've surprised me. After closing the window, Director Luo pulled out a document from his drawer. Actually, when Uncle Shu came to me with your request, I had already approved it. Take it. Come to me if you need any help, but remember, you only have 2 to 3 months left. Chen Ji accepted the document, and the first line read, New Century Park's Underground Parking Lot Usage Agreement. After flipping through it, Chen Ji did not find any clauses related to rental. Director Luo, is the document missing something? Have you not seen a free rental agreement before? I've stamped the document, so it'll be effective after you sign it. The document is effective until the park closes, so make good use of it and don't let me down. Director Luo's mood seemed to have improved greatly. He poured himself another cup of tea and said, You should be quite busy from now on, so I won't hold you any longer. When Chen Ji exited the office holding the contract, he still could not believe that he had managed to get the park's underground parking lot without paying a single dime. According to the contract, he was allowed free use of the parking lot as long as the park did not go under. Chen Ji assumed that Director Luo was being so generous because the park would close in another 2 or 3 months' time when the new park at Eastern Jiujiang opened. The underground parking lot is a third of the size of the park. Even though it has been abandoned, to be able to rent it for free is still a wonderful surprise. Chen Ji felt his luck had gotten much better after taking care of the mirror monster. He had received a Medal of Honor, the reward money was coming soon, and he had solved the issue of expansion, everything was looking up. Could it be that removing dirty things can improve my luck? Chen Ji did not think that things would be so coincidental, the thought was merely to humor himself. After returning to the haunted house, Chen Ji started his work for the day. He had Xiao Wan put on the park uniform and stand outside the haunted house to sell tickets while he roamed through the murder by midnight scenario, chasing the visitors about in his Dr. Skullcracker uniform. Chen Ji exited the haunted house at 5 p.m. He let Xiao Wan leave early before going to get his money. This will be the first time in my life there have been 4 digits in my bank account. I deserve some celebration tonight. Chen Ji changed into a clean outfit in the staff break room and was about to leave when he saw a small rag doll lying beside his bed. The small fella had most of her body hidden underneath the bed like she was playing hide and seek. The day is still bright, but you're out here already. Chen Ji was suddenly reminded of the thing Captain Yan had told him that morning. The grandpa's situation seems to be deteriorating, and he has no family around him. I should go pay him a visit. Chen Ji poked Xiao Xiao on her stomach before putting her in his pocket and leaving the haunted house. At 6:15 p.m., Chen Ji exited the bureau with the reward money of 36,000, which was less than he had expected. After purchasing a fruit basket and some milk, Chen Ji departed for Jiujiang People's Hospital. With the nurse leading the way, he entered a sick bay on the 3rd floor. He was there only to visit the elderly grandfather, but to his surprise, he ran into a familiar face there. Inspector Li, why are you here? Sitting beside the bed, Inspector Li was feeding the elder some porridge. He was as careful as a little girl when he took care of the old man. This is weird, how come I keep on running into you everywhere I go? Inspector Li placed a towel on the elder's chest. After a good night's sleep, the station manager saw how tired I was, so he assigned me a lighter job for the day. Law enforcement even cares about things like this. The elder came into the mishap under our watch, so before we can find him a personal caretaker, it's only fair that we look after him. Inspector Li tried feeding him twice, but the elder man seemed to have no appetite. He did not force it but put the spoon down to point at Chen Ji, who stood at the door. Sir, this is the young man who provided us with the crucial evidence to solve the case and the young man who called us that night to save you. When he saw Chen Ji, the old man's arm that was still movable twitched, but it was unclear what he was trying to communicate. Thinking back, I should be thanking the old sir. If not for the fact you broke the bowl at paying an apartment to warn me, I wouldn't have realized how weird things were. Chen Ji placed the fruit basket and milk on the counter. Looking at the old man who looked like he could depart at any moment, Chen Ji's heart shook. Inspector Li, do you mind leaving the room for a minute? I have something personal to talk to the old sir. Inspector Li did not know what Chen Ji was up to, but due to trust, he walked out without asking any questions. After closing the door, Chen Ji pulled the doll out from his pocket. Old sir, I brought Xiao Xiao to come see you. When Chen Ji took out Xiaoxiao, the old man in the bed did not show any response, but when his murky eyes fell on the ragdoll, the man's pupil shook greatly, and a voice that sounded like it came from a broken bellow escaped from the old man's lips. The arm that could still move reached out as if to grab something. "You can see her." Chen Ji did not expect this. He had brought Xiaoxiao there to see her family, but he did not expect that the senior would be able to see Xiaoxiao, who possessed the ragdoll. He hurried to the bedside and placed the doll lightly in the old man's arm. The senior's arm hugged the doll tightly before he settled down again. According to legends, people are able to see to the other world at the end of their life. The black phone in Chen Ji's pocket vibrated. He exited the room to give the grandfather and the granddaughter their privacy. "I heard some noises coming from inside the room earlier. What did you tell him?" "Listen to me, the senior's situation is very fragile, and he won't be able to survive too much of a shock." Inspector Lee stood outside the door. Should things turn awry, he would rush in immediately. "I only brought the old sir, the person he wished to see the most." Chen Ji sat on the bench provided in the corridor and pulled out the black phone. He realized the reason of the vibration was because on the affection page, Yin Xiaoxia's affection level had increased from slightly favorable opinion to can be trusted. "The little fella is the most unique baleful specter I've ever met. I wonder what will happen when I raise her affection level to the maximum." Chen Ji returned the phone to his pocket and leaned against the wall. "Uncle Sanbao, don't worry, the old sir will recover." "You sure are optimistic." Chen Ji and Inspector Lee chatted for a long time. When they entered the room, the senior's condition had stabilized. He waved at Chen Ji, but nobody understood what he meant. After nodding at the nurse, Chen Ji left with Xiaoxiao. The little fella hid inside the doll, apparently asleep. After getting a quick dinner at the roadside stall, Chen Ji rushed back to the haunted house. "I still haven't accepted today's daily mission yet. I wonder if there's still time." Among the 3 daily missions, the most suitable was definitely the expansion. All he needed to do was choose the direction of expansion and a general location. Last night, before leaving for Western Jiuzhang's private academy, Chen Ji had glossed through the 3 daily missions. The simple mission was to check for hidden security threats. The normal mission was to find a suitable location to expand the haunted house. The nightmare mission was to identify the other individual that shared his room. If he wanted the biggest reward, naturally, the nightmare mission was the best choice. However, according to his previous 2 experience, nightmare missions had a time requirement, and they were mostly around midnight. Once he missed that period, there was high chance the mission would fail automatically. There's no need to risk it. Chen Ji selected to accept the normal mission. Normal mission, you've achieved the criteria to enable the first expansion of the haunted house. Do search for a suitable location soon. This was the first time that Chen Ji had expanded the haunted house. He did not know how to go about it, and the black phone did not give him any instructions. "I can't find a guide, so it looks like I'll have to slowly research it on my own." Chen Ji looked at the interface of the app and 2 places captured his attention. My team of ghosts and ghouls was still empty, which meant that neither Zhang Yan nor Yin Xiaoxiao had become part of the haunted house. Yin Xiaoxiao was probably because he had not earned enough affection points, while Zhang Yan, Chen Ji would be thankful if she just stopped trying to kill him, much less asking her to join the haunted house. The second thing that attracted Chen Ji's attention was the tab for haunted house expansion. The original gray font had turned red. After clicking on it, a sentence appeared on screen. "Please select the location of the entrance." If the words become red, it means that they're clickable. The location of the entrance, you say. The underground parking lot Chen Ji rented was huge, but the only downside was that the entrance to the parking lot was outside of the park. The path was not streamlined, so he planned to open a new path underneath the haunted house, one that directly led to the underground parking lot. Normally, large attractions like roller coasters or Ferris wheels were not allowed to have any space underneath them, but since the haunted house was located at the isolated corner, it was the sole exception at New Century Park. In fact, the space right underneath Chen Ji's building was the parking lot. Holding the black phone, Chen Ji walked to the entrance to the Night of the Living Dead scenario that was on the first floor. After gaining the 2 1-star scenarios, Ming'an and Murder by Midnight, this scenario had pretty much been abandoned. I'll set the door beside the entrance to this scenario. If it is necessary in the future, I can just remove and replace the Night of the Living Dead scenario. That was Chen Ji's plan. He used a piece of chalk to mark out an area on the floor, but he realized after drawing it that he had no way of communicating his plan to the black phone. Since he received the mysterious phone, it had been a one-way communication. Have I missed something? Chen Ji clicked through the app. When he tried tapping the home page twice, the haunted house that was used as the background suddenly zoomed out until Chen Ji could see its layout, which was similar to his actual haunted house, including the locations and setup of the many scenarios. So, I do it here. Chen Ji found the scenario for Night of the Living Dead on screen. He clicked on an empty space beside the entrance and a question instantly popped up on screen. Are you sure you want to place the entrance here? Yes. Please select the expansion direction. Downward. After making his choice, the screen returned to normal, and several other messages popped up. Only through continuous expansion will your haunted house be able to play host to more homeless spirits and thus collect more screams. Congratulations for completing the normal mission. Obtained reward, a free spin at the Wheel of Misfortune. Congratulations for completing your first ever expansion. Special reward, a unique construct obtained, Midnight Ticket Counter, broken. Midnight Ticket Counter, broken. There's a 1 in 1,000 chance for you to attract special visitors. They are different from others and might lend you a helping hand. Chen Ji read the messages carefully. The mission had rewarded him with a free spin at the Wheel of Misfortune, but there was too much of uncertainty to this reward. Only by trading 100 screams would he get the chance to spin at once. According to the description on the phone, there were definitely some useful things that could be won from the lucky draw. However, even Chen Ji had scared himself with how lucky he was. What if he won another cursed love letter? The two baleful specters might just split himself perfectly in half so that each of them could have their way with him equally. An image of the two spirits holding bloodied knives in their hands arguing over who would lay claim to his skull and body appeared in his mind. Too soon, too soon. The Wheel of Misfortune was thus put on the back burner, so Chen Ji turned to look at the other reward, the broken Midnight Ticket Counter. His haunted house had been missing a specialized ticket counter. After all, before obtaining the black phone, he had at most 10 visitors in a week, hence there was no reason to build a ticket counter. The black phone has helped me solve a problem, but what is the meaning of this 1 in 1,000 chance of attracting special visitors? Does it mean ghosts? Chen Ji purposely walked to the front door, but the gate had remained the same, nothing had changed. Perhaps the change will happen after midnight like how it did with the murder by midnight scenario. Since he had received the rewards, Chen Ji stopped worrying about them. He cleaned the place while waiting for midnight to arrive. Even though the mirror monster had been vanquished, it did not mean that the number on the mirror would disappear. Chen Ji rolled up his sleeves as he cleaned the fake blood off the toilet's mirror. He was acting in such a hurry because there had been a little incident that afternoon. A visitor had asked to use the toilet when he was inside the haunted house. Chen Ji had led him to the toilet, but when the man had seen the fake blood that pooled around the floor, he had refused to enter the toilet. He had held his pee in until his face was green as Chen Ji led him out of the haunted house. The scary places should be scary, but other places should be as comfortable as possible. After all, we're in the service business. That was some advice that Chen Ji's father had once given him, and he remembered it to this day. Chen Ji finished cleaning the fake blood at around 11 p.m. He also fixed the broken toilet door. Then he stood before the mirror with his phone. He checked his profile on the video sharing app. His number of followers was slowly increasingly, and his videos were heavily shared. In fact, some advertisers had come to him with offers already. I need to pay attention to the videos and live streams as well. After all, they're my main source of promotion. When it was 11:59 p.m., Chen Ji put away his phone and stood before the mirror. Similar to his first nightmare mission, he locked the toilet from within and turned off all the lights. Like and subscribe.